Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Now, March the 22nd is World Water Day. Nearly 1 out of 10 people on this planet don't have access to clean water. That is 844 million people. Africa 54's Zoe Lutake spoke with Dr. Greg Allgood of World Vision, an organization that is making a difference in the life of millions.
Lack of potable water plagues millions of people in the world and causes 1,000 children to die every day. Dr. Greg Allgood is a passionate advocate for bringing clean water to rural communities in Africa.
We have an audacious goal between 2015 and 2020 to bring clean water to 20 million people. So 20 million people by 2020, and to reach everyone everywhere we work by 2030. The good news is we're on track. In the first 2 years of our commitment, we've reached nearly 8 million people with clean water. In fact, we're reaching 1 new person with clean water every 10 seconds. 1 person every 10 seconds. That's an unprecedented rate for a non-governmental group.
World Vision is active in 40 countries in Africa, and the key to their success is involving the communities every step of the way.
The most important group that we work with is the local community. We work with them so that the solutions that we co-create together can be sustained over the long term. They invest from the beginning. They set up a water committee for every water point, and they collect a fee so that when the water point breaks down, there's money in the bank available to fix the water point. And we've shown that that approach works.
Clean water not only changes the communities by promoting economic growth, it also makes it possible for girls to attend school and to live healthier and more productive lives. Zoe Lutake, Voice of America, Washington.
Now, dwindling water supply is not just a crisis in rural parts of Africa. Major cities in Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria face serious water problems. In South Africa, Cape Town is at a risk of becoming the first major city in the world to run out of water due to severe droughts. For the latest, we're joined live via Skype by Christine Colvin from the Worldwide Fund for Nature in Cape Town. Ms. Colvin, welcome to Africa 54.
Thanks. Hello.
Hello. Now, Cape Town is going through something nobody imagined a big city would go through, where there is actually an anticipated day zero, where there won't be any water in the taps. What happened? What went wrong?
Yes, so day zero was communicated by our city for several months to really help to focus the public's attention on how little water there was left, and the point at which we wouldn't completely run out, but when day zero was reached, that's the point at which water straight to your taps in your homes would be switched off, and we would have to go and collect water, 25 liters per person per day, from standpipes. So it would completely change the way that we received water in Cape Town. And at the moment, day zero has been pushed out into next year because it's anticipated that that time would come possibly in August, which is after the period when we normally receive our winter rains. Yes. But we've yet to see if the winter rains will come.
Now, we know that so many other African countries face serious droughts, prolonged droughts. What is it that could have been done differently in Cape Town that could have changed things, or could change things even looking forward?
So we're now in the 3rd year of our drought, and obviously looking back, we wish that we'd done a lot more in year 1 and year 2, and also that we'd acted on the advice of the scientists who were projecting that under conditions of climate change, this region in the Western Cape would be a lot drier in the future. And the uncertainty was, so when does the future start? And for us now, the future is now. So I think bringing policy and practice much closer to our scientific understanding of what the future holds for us, probably increasing the price of water much earlier than we did. That's only been in force really since the 1st of February, a dramatic increase in the cost of water, and very severe water restrictions are now in place. I think what the city have done well is that they, for many years in advance of this drought, focused on the built infrastructure infrastructure, and we've got a relatively low level of losses from leakages in our city infrastructure in Cape Town. So we know that we're not losing a lot of water unnecessarily. However, where we also need to focus attention, and it's particularly pertinent today on World Water Day, when it's all about nature for water, we also need to focus upstream of the dams and to make sure that our catchments and our water source areas are in really good condition to keep yielding as much water as possible into our built infrastructure downstream.
Now, we know that so many other cities may be facing the same challenge, perhaps today or in the future. What is it that cities must do, especially given that they are receiving too many people coming from the countryside?
Yeah, we're faced with this dual challenge of rapid urbanization and now under conditions of climate change. So my advice is, the first thing is take the science seriously. We have all the evidence to show that climate change is happening, and whether it's increased floods and storms or increased droughts, then start planning for those as soon as possible. Don't wait for the first drought to hit you before you start responding. I think another issue is to look at the whole water value chain, the whole supply chain. Okay. So try and reduce the level of leaks and look after the catchments.
Great. Thank you very much, Christine. We do appreciate your thoughts. Christine Colvin from the Worldwide Fund for Nature in Cape Town, South Africa. We'll have more on World Water Day coming up later in our health report. Now, it's a done deal. 44 African nations signed up Wednesday in Rwanda to establish a $3 trillion continental free trade zone within 18 months. The deal encompasses 1.2 billion people. However, Nigeria and South Africa, the two biggest economies on the continent, failed to sign up, casting a shadow over the project. It's not immediately clear why South Africa and Nigeria stayed on the sidelines. A number of other nations also did not sign the deal, including Botswana, Lesotho, Namibia, Zambia, and Guinea-Bissau. The African Union started talks in 2015 to establish a 55-nation bloc that would be the biggest in the world by member states in a bid to increase intra-regional trade. Now, Rwandan President Paul Kagame, host of the summit, declared the gathering a success.
The advantages we gain by creating one African market will also benefit our trading partners around the world, and that is a good thing. At the same time, we will be in a better position to leverage our growing strength and unity to secure Africa's rightful interests in the international arena. This is not just a signing ceremony. Today's deliberations are critically important as we chart the next steps on our journey towards the Africa we want.
Well, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said in a statement the economic treaty is an important step towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and delivering on the African agenda of peace and prosperity. Now, officials in the Democratic Republic of Congo are struggling to set up an electronic voting system for long overdue elections. The 2011 vote was marred by disorder and irregularities, resulting in a two-year political standoff. Viewers, Anita Powell has more from Kinshasa.
Congo's new electronic system is meant to smooth the voting process in a nation the size of Western Europe, but with little infrastructure, low literacy levels, and more candidates running for office than any other African nation. The vote was supposed to happen in 2016, but President Joseph Kabila did not step down when his term ended. After the last chaotic election 7 years ago, the Election Commission realized that the sheer size of the country posed numerous challenges.
Here in Kinshasa, around the airport, there is the district of Tshangu, which had 1,575 candidates. Each ballot contains the name of the candidate, the symbol of the party, their photo, and the logo of their party. It made an 11 by 17-inch brochure of 53 pages. That ballot weighed more than 300 grams.
Election officials hope the Korean-made machines will allow people to vote faster. With the system, Kalamba says voters can make their choice in minutes, allowing the election to finish in a day. But the opposition has doubts.
We've heard the explanation of the voting machines. The explanation of the voting machine did not convince us because the test that they did, the test advised it would take a minimum of 2 minutes and 15 seconds per person to vote. That means it would take for everyone to vote 3 days, the people advised.
And the son of the man who claimed to win the last poll, deceased opposition leader Etienne Tshisekedi, was even more blunt.
The voting machines for us are cheating machines. These implements are designed to let the candidate who is chosen by Kabila or by the legislature to fabricate a fake majority like they did in 2011.
The commission hopes to have everything in order by the poll in December, but previous tests have suffered malfunctions. Kabila's delay in arranging elections has sparked recent protests and a brutal crackdown that led to the deaths of at least 15 people. Which is why election officials say the vote needs to happen, so the nation gets its say on the ballot. Anita Powell, VOA News, Kinshasa.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Coming up, combating Malawi's deadly cholera outbreak. Stay with us.
This is a country that I chose to become a citizen. I didn't have to become a citizen. I chose to become a citizen.
I feel like America gave me an opportunity to pursue my passion as an artist.
I really believe that clean eating is a way to a more successful life, or a happier life, if you want to put it that way.
One of the things that helps me wake up every morning is doing better, being better.
We grew up poor, and so I'm always focused on helping the working class be able to have a more comfortable lifestyle.
I'm passionate about doing justice every day. I oftentimes say that justice is a verb, not a noun. You know, I believe in action and moving the ball forward.
Embassy in Washington is set to hold a U.S.-Nigeria investment summit in April. The summit aims to highlight the untapped investment opportunities in Nigeria for U.S. investors and companies. Its theme is Nigeria is open for business. Now, to tell us more about it, I'm joined in studio by Adebayo Idowu, Head of Economics, Trade and Investment Section, Embassy of Nigeria, and Felix Obi, International Trade and Commerce Policy Consultant. Gentlemen, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And first, let's talk about why did you want to do this kind of summit here in the United States? Maybe tell us, Mr. Idowu.
Well, we're all aware of the position of the United States in the world economy. That is one. Second, the IMF and the World Bank are having their spring meetings, so you have naturally a collection of important decision makers from most countries, including Nigeria, coming to Washington. So you might say I'm profiting from that coincidence.
Taking advantage of that.
Taking advantage of that to do what we really need to do in Nigeria.
Mr. Obi, Felix Obi.
Thank you for that.
What case can you make for somebody who wants to invest in Nigeria? Because sometimes people are skeptical about the challenges they have to face when they go to Nigeria, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is the regulations and laws. How do you encourage somebody to go to Nigeria and invest?
Indeed, that's the whole point of the summit, right? It is to be able to bring the partners who want to invest in Nigeria and to be able to bring the stakeholders from Nigeria who can respond to those questions. The bigger question is, why would you not want to be in Nigeria? It's an economy of 190 million people. It's the largest economy on the continent. right? So the challenge is, how do you make it work? And that's what this summit proposes to do.
Yeah.
And so hopefully on April 21st, we will have U.S. investors, leaders of corporations, being able to meet a Nigerian delegation with authority to make decisions.
Now, of course, the market size is very attractive to anybody who wants to invest. But, Mr. Edo, somebody will say, well, Nigeria is known, just like many other African countries, to have a big problem with corruption and really terrible infrastructure and certain complications that include inefficiencies. How do you make a case that a person should want to go and take their money to Nigeria?
Well, I would like to encourage everybody not to dwell in the past. The government of Nigeria has made tremendous effort to improve the ease of doing business in Nigeria, to such an extent that the country has improved 24 points on the World Bank ease of doing business. This is what we want to consolidate further in this summit by bringing decision makers who will explain the incentives and how to overcome all the shortcomings that we have in the economy.
Yeah, but Mr. Obi, we've been seeing people really looking now east. China's big on the continent, and many are wondering whether, you know, the U.S. or an investor from the U.S. can win in Nigeria against China.
Absolutely, and it's true to acknowledge that China is making inroads, but the critical value proposition for the United States is that we come with a market system that does not place the burden of debt on public sector finances that are already challenged in Africa. As you know, when the Chinese come into Africa, they make concession loans to state or subnational governments. This puts tremendous pressure on the finances. Critically, it doesn't also address the market failures that occasion this deficits in infrastructure and industry. The U.S. market system will seek regulatory reform, as you point out. It will seek market reform, and it will seek protection of property rights. These are the value propositions that this summit could bring from the U.S. side. And this critically frees the government's finances and allows the government to go into its regulatory mode, and the economy works better.
Now, when does this summit take place? And why? Who do you expect will be coming to the summit?
The summit commences at 8 a.m. on the 21st of April, 2018, at the JW Marriott Hotel, 1331 Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. Just a few blocks from the White House and opposite the mayor's office.
Oh, right.
And we also have a training and governance session on Monday. That's on the 23rd. That will take place at the Embassy of Nigeria in International Court. Also, in the evening of the 21st, we are going to have a reception that is invitation only.
Only. I know a few of us over there. Just very briefly, in which sectors would a person from the United States want to come and invest in Nigeria?
The critical sectors are infrastructure, power, energy, agriculture, but more broadly, financiers, hedge fund managers, captains of finance industries can also come in there to see what industry that needs access to capital.
Yeah,
right.
But do you as a consultant actually acknowledge that there is a perception problem, that actually you have to go past that?
There is a perception problem, but what I will also say to the investor is that perception problem is a barrier to entry. And once you come in, you realize there's a potential and you would have the market wide open to yourself.
Yeah.
So please come in, investors, and have the market wide open to yourself.
Last thoughts in a few seconds.
Well, UNIS 2018 is a place to be.
Yeah.
I will encourage investors not to miss out on the opportunity, tremendous opportunity that we have. Because the next frontier of world growth is in Africa. And where in Africa, if not Nigeria?
Wow, over 100 million people, why not? Thank you very much, gentlemen. I really appreciate your coming over. All right, that's Adebayo Edowo is the head of economics and trade and investment section at the Embassy of Nigeria, and Felix Obi is an international trade and commerce policy consultant. I thank them for coming over. Well, it's time now for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with more news on World Water Day. Hi, Lino.
That's right, Vincent. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres received recently a new report on the current global water crisis from the high-level panel on water, which includes 11 heads of state and a special advisor. The report, Making Every Drop Count, an agenda for water action, found that the water crisis has many dimensions. 40% of the world's people are affected by water scarcity, with as many as 700 million people at risk of being displaced by intense water scarcity by 2030. More than 2 billion people are compelled to drink unsafe water, and more than 4.5 billion people do not have safely managed sanitation services. The report calls for a fundamental shift in the way the world manages water so that the Sustainable Development Goals can be achieved.
It is my deep belief that water is a matter of life and death. 60% of our body is water. 2 million people in the world have no access to safe water, and 4.5 million to proper sanitation, which means that we are facing an enormous challenge. On the other hand, climate change is still running faster than what we are, and the implications of that from the point of view of the water systems is huge. And if one looks at natural disasters, the natural disasters that have water included in them are multiplying and becoming more and more dangerous everywhere.
Now to Malawi, where people are confronted with the challenges of containing a cholera outbreak. A new solution of using drones to map the cholera-affected areas gives hope that the endemic disease could be contained soon. In Malawi, cholera has been a serious concern for the past 4 months. This has been blamed on poor hygiene and use of contaminated water. A joint initiative by the United Nations Children's Agency, UNICEF, and Malawi government recently implemented a new way to collect data of the plague using drones. These flying objects are controlled to create image maps of high-risk areas to stem the spread of cholera.
We have been using like chalkboards and walls to draw maps before, which can work, but it doesn't necessarily give the same kind of contact that people have when they see something printed out like this, and they can say, oh, that's the marketplace. Oh, and look at that rubbish, all the rubbish that's there, so they can relate to it better. So it helps to get people very animated and to say, no, we've got to do something about this. We have to do something about what we see, because we can see it right here in this picture in front of us.
The districts heavily hit by the disease are Karonga, Lilongwe, Salima and Dedza. With the use of drones, the country stands a chance of reducing the high risk of the communicable disease.
What I have seen is so encouraging. This is timely, and we are happy about this technology because it will enable us to deal with specific cholera hotspots.
Community leaders of the project and the residents participate in studying the maps. The drone was introduced in February 2018. They also contributed in planning for future improvements.
It has revealed many things that we didn't know about. As community leaders, we now have a huge task to ensure that our surroundings are clean and tidy. We have assured the organizers that we will take immediate action, and within the next 6 months, things will improve.
World Health Organization policy and recommendations states that preventing occurrence of cholera includes proper sanitation, safety of food, and provision of clean water. Several other African countries are dealing with cholera outbreaks, including Zambia and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Health workers say the maps created through drone imagery help bring the scope of the crisis into perspective for many residents. With this new technology, officials hope for a better target response in efforts to stem this humanitarian crisis in Malawi. And that's all for our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter @LinorMudu. Vincent, back to you.
Well, Lino, thank you very much. Now be sure to watch Lino Mudu's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. A cultural symbol becomes a trendy fashion statement. We'll be right back.
In Burundi, President Pierre Nkurunziza scheduled a referendum that will determine whether his term will be extended for another 10 years. In Rwanda, 44 African nations signed a free trade agreement, forming the world's largest union in participating countries. In Zimbabwe, Vice President Constantino Chiwenga says there will be a 5.8% increase of tobacco production in 2018, which will help the country's massive cash shortages. Cameroon's President Paul Biya is visiting China to discuss economic relations. Biya is one of the first African leaders to meet with China's newly chosen officials. Finally, in Kenya, Nestle is working with 42,000 small-scale Kenyan coffee farmers, investing $1 million to boost production to support the nation's third-largest export.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending, a cultural symbol and a fashion statement. The Basotho blanket has never lost its meaning for appeal, and now young designers are finding that they can create something new from the history of their country, Lesotho, and now popular motifs from the blankets are being incorporated into modern fashions. A Basotho blanket featured in the recent Marvel blockbuster Black Panther, which tells the story of a wealthy, never colonized African nation called Wakanda that is protected by its king and the first black African superhero. In the film, the blankets act as powerful armor for a community of warriors disguised as farmers and herders that guard Wakanda's borders. Next up, international food giant Nestle is working with Kenyan farmers to increase land and coffee cultivation after a drop in production over the years. Kenya's coffee production peaked at 129,000 tons in 1988 and 1989, but has dropped steadily due to poor management and global price swings, pushing farmers to switch to other crops or sell their land. The Nescafe plan trains farmers on fertilizer application, pest and disease control. It also provides seedlings for farmers wishing to plant more. Nestle buys a whopping 10% of the world's annual coffee crop. And finally, a trend very few saw coming. Historically, axes are for cutting wood, but now axe throwing is becoming a popular pastime in hipster bars across the United States. Kick axe throwing is the first bar in New York City to pick up on the nationwide trend. Scoring is similar to darts. Players aim at a wooden board painted with a blue bullseye and rings corresponding to different point values. And now there is money in the pastime. The World Axe Throwing League held its first World Championship tournament in December. The games were broadcast remotely on Facebook Live. The winner took home $3,500 prize. And that's what's trending. And that's our show for today. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. This expression sounds like a violent way of eating, but it's actually not always about eating.
Here is your Russian book, Anna. Thanks for letting me borrow it.
Oh, are you done with level 1 already?
Yeah, I finished last week, and I've already finished level 2.
Wow, you are really sinking your teeth into learning Russian.
Well,